Hi, my name is Rebecca Foust, and I'll be reading a poem of mine today and talking to you about two techniques, anaphora and use of the second person, at work in that poem. And just to give you a bit of an overview, what I'll do first is introduce myself, then I'll read that poem, which is called Apologies to My OBGYN. Then I'll talk briefly about those two techniques, and I'll close by reading a second poem that doesn't use those techniques so that you can get an idea of what a difference it makes, particularly in the tone between the two poems. To introduce myself, again, my name is Rebecca Foust. I came to poetry late in life in 2007, the year I turned 50, when my responsibilities of work and of 3 children finally had gotten to the point where I had time to pursue what had been a lifelong dream. I went back to grad school and earned an MFA from Warren Wilson in 2010. And that's the year I really started publishing, putting out what is now my 5th book, this one, Paradise Drive, which won the Press 53 Award and is being released at this year's 2015 AWP. And that book is available on the website at press53.com. The poem that I'd like to focus on today is from my first book, All That Gorgeous Pitiless Song, but it actually first appeared in a chapbook called Dark Card, which was comprised completely of poems about the experience I had of being pregnant with, giving birth to, and then parenting a son with autism. This poem relates somewhat to the delivery experience, and it's called Apologies to My OBGYN. Sorry that my boy birthed himself too early, took up too much room in your prenatal nursery with his 2 pounds, 2 ounces, and did not oblige the nurses with easy veins. Sorry we were such pains in your ass, asking you to answer our night calls like that, and that he did everything so backwards, lost weight, gained fluid, blew up like a human balloon, then shriveled. Sorry about how he defied your prognoses, skyrocketed premiums, weighted the costs in your cost-benefit analyses, skewed bell curve predictions into one long, straight line. Sorry he took so much of your time, being so determined to live. He spent today saving hopeless case nymph moths trapped in the porch light, one matrix dot at a time. Now he's asleep, blue wing beat pulse fluttering his left temple. There again, just like it did then. So you may have noticed one technique at work in that poem, which is repetition of the word sorry 4 times at the beginnings of lines in that poem. That technique is called anaphora. Its twin companion technique is called epistrophe. And in that technique, the repetition occurs at the end of the line. And I've done quite a bit of reading about anaphora and the other technique, and anaphora is very, very effective when your intent is to grab the reader's attention and to have them remember something, particularly the repeated phrase. It's used quite often in sermons and also in political speeches. And if you think about Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, that's a great example of anaphora. I have a classmate named Jamal May from Warren Wilson who wrote his thesis on uses of repetition. I think his thesis was called Sonic Authority. And he makes the point that in general, it can be a bit risky to use anaphora because, particularly in a political poem, because you can risk coming on too strong, sounding like a rant, and hammering your reader over the head with your message. And he makes a point, which is a great one, which is that if you use some of the more subtle forms of repetition that are available, that he discusses in his essay, then you can actually, instead of lighting the way with flaming arrows, you can scatter breadcrumbs that the readers have to pick up and construct in order to get the message. And in some ways this is more effective because then you have drawn the reader in and actually gotten them to engage with their poem. But I'm going to take the position today that for some poems, for this poem in particular, anaphora is exactly the right technique to use. This poem is called an apology. Obviously that's ironic. The speaker is not apologizing to her OBGYN. She's calling him out. It's a species of rant poem. It's a species, I would say, even of curse poem. And I think in this kind of very strongly emotioned poem where rage is the driving force, anaphora is a great technique. And what I like to do when I read the poem, I hope I did it this time, is I like to hit that word sorry harder each time I encounter it, so that by the time I get to the end, I'm really at the peak of feeling. And then I make the switch to the image of the child, the beautiful image of the child whose main concern in life is to rescue those moths in the trapped in the porch light, and his incredible physical beauty, not only now, but also when he lay on the delivery table and all those decisions got made about how and whether to save his life. The second technique at work in that poem is, you may have noticed that I cast it in the second person singular you. And the reason I did that is because it's a message to the doctor. I know that in writing our poems, we often think about our audience. Well, the first audience, when I was thinking about writing this poem, was that doctor. And I was putting words in the mouth of a speaker who was too overwhelmed by circumstances at the time to be able to say those things. But on reflection afterwards, wanted to say those things and wanted to say them directly to the doctor. I guess the other intended audience would be mothers and women in that similar position of being dictated to by male doctors. It's been a problem in our medical establishment for years. It's getting better now, but it's still an issue for many people. But the use of the second person allowed the speaker to look that doctor in the metaphorical eye and to say things out loud to him that she wished she had said at an earlier time. So that's why I used the second person. So I think what I'd like to do now is close with a second poem from this first collection of poems written or inspired by my son. And this poem uses neither of these techniques. It doesn't use anaphora, and it doesn't use second person. And in listening to it, I'd like you to think about what a difference that makes, how it casts the doctor, who is also a character in this poem, and what a difference it makes in the tone of the overall poem. This is called Too Soon. It's not my fault, my doctor says, that my cervix is incompetent 1,000 ways, or that the DES prescribed for mom's miscarriages merely deferred them to me. Now here I lie, on my left side, mandolin belly, for the moment, alive, with my restless son. My hands make a cradle, rocking him early to sleep. My labor heaves up in great waves like the moon-crazed tide. It raves like the tide-crazed moon, rising and rising, too soon, too soon. I can't get my breath, my gown's soaked with milk, all spilt. My doctor looks young and afraid. My nurse asks me, "Have you ever prayed?" So that's all I have. I hope that that gives you some insight into the uses of anaphora, repetition of a word or sound at the beginning of a line, and also of use of second person, and how if you combine those in a poem, it can work quite well for a rant or curse poem or any other poem where you really want to get that strong, in this case, emotion of anger across. Thanks for listening.